We've entered a new era in Marvel Rivals where metas aren't defined by combos, power level, or even ultimates, but your ability to stall the objective. That's right, the very first kernel of knowledge you learn when you pick up Marvel Rivals, play the objective, is now being taken to its absolute extreme in pro matches. And we got to see this showcased a ton in Ignite, which just concluded, and we crowned our victor. And this is the first episode in a series where I break down interesting meta discoveries and fundamentals that you can abuse in your ranked games that are being used and pioneered by the pro players. One fight in particular had a magic user ultimate twice and generated another 2 times before the point even got capped. That's right, that's almost 4 minutes for first fight, and if you're wondering how this even happened, let me introduce you to the matchup between YFP and Sentinels. This is an earlier matchup in Ignite, but one of the best examples I could find where they played on the Celestial Husk domination map, specifically Celestial Vault, the map with the giant sword in the middle. Now, YFP did win the first map, and they are walking into that first fight with a little bit of ultimate advantage. Specifically, they have a Jeff ult, they have a Strange ult, and also a Magic ult that is about at 95%, so they basically have it. This is where Sentinels is close to a lot of different ults, 92% on Loki, 72% on Mantis, and some other ults that are within range to be gotten within the next 20-30 seconds or so. And one of the things that's super important is that Sentinels has one of the best tank players, Techie, on Venom, because Venom made it through the ban phase. And that's really important on this map in particular, because Venom has an ability where he can run on walls, and this pillar does not get broken and just stays up. This giant sword in the middle of point, and a Venom can run along this objective. He's low enough to where he's still contesting point, but high enough to where he can constantly run around and a lot of characters can't touch him. This is really important because what YFP do right off the bat is that they pop their magic ult and they go in and also combo it with the Strange ult that simultaneously stuns multiple people on the enemy team, and the Strange and the magic clean them up. This means that the Luna and the Loki die instantly and the Cap dies soon after that. So yeah, the fight's over, right? No, not even close. As the enemy team pushed off to engage their backline, the Venom stayed behind, and he's just hanging around the pillar. And now the enemy team have to fully back up to try to clear the Venom off the pillar, because with the Venom's massive health total, his ability to gain extra shields, and him constantly running around the pillar, basically playing hide and go to seek with the enemy, they could not clear him with just the few backline supports they had, so they needed to bring the whole team. Once the entire enemy team pulled back, then Sentinels re-engaged with Mantis ult, and the fight's back on. Then the Loki Renko, coming back from Sentinels, copies the Luna Snow ultimate and neutralizes the enemy Jeff ult, and now there's a pick on YFP's Jeff, and it looks like Sentinels is gonna run away with the point now when they have a defensive ultimate and the enemy team is down 1 player. Is what I should say, but YFP built up a Cloak ult and an Atom ult, so combining the two, they managed to resurrect their Jeff and bring their team back alive, and the Cloak also gets to use their ultimate to catch the Mantis out of position, Nectar on Sentinels, and kill the Mantis too. So now they have advantage, and they're up, so surely they win? I don't know at this point. Crimson on Sentinels pops his ult, his Cap ult, which is a pseudo-defensive ult, keeping his team alive while they re-engage and re-enter the fight. So he's trying to conserve his team's HP, contest the objective, and they use it to make a comeback. Come back onto the point, get the magic, but in the process they lose Avery, their Gene player, and it's basically still an even fight going left and right at this point. Now, the problem here is that everyone used the majority of their ultimates, and everyone is kind of in this neutral state where the fight restarts. So after all of those ultimate trades, all those kills, now the fight slows down again, and everyone is just poking and prodding like it's first fight with no ultimates, and that's crazy considering the match started like almost 2 minutes ago. Now, somewhere in this long exchange of resources, the Magic, who started the entire fight contention with an ultimate, has built another ultimate They ult and get a ton of value with that ult. However, because of a combination of some trades and Venom once again running around the pillar, running around the sword and stalling, Sentinels get to pour back onto point and have another refight. The combination of the stall of the character and the port create this mass stalling problem, and we once again enter another ultimate cycle where ultimates are being dumped, support ults are being used, and I'm not gonna lie, if it wasn't for YFP hitting this massive 3-man ultimate with Jeff and dumping them all off the map, this fight might have gone on forever. He literally had to get a 3-man support kill, and that was the only way that the fight was actually gonna end. Crazy stuff. Now, I think that this meta is crazy, and this is not the only time this has happened. This stall has happened over and over again on this map, and I'm not gonna lie, you gotta just make this freaking sword breakable. I mean, is this really what we want? Infinite stall on maps like this? That's insane. But it doesn't really hold a candle to the other predominant stall strategy that we're seeing that pro teams across the board are doing every single time, and you could easily do this in your ranked games as well to basically give you a massive advantage. And the example I'm using is a match between Kiri and Envy. Yeah, it was on the same day, so, you know, that's the day I watched intently. But I saw this stall strategy multiple times used, and it was basically used on convoy maps across the board. But at the beginning of the match, Kiri was on defense on Yggdrasil's path, and they decided to go, well, Goats, which is a iconic composition in Rivals, a awful composition, or some people I guess liked it, but it was 3 tanks, 3 supports, and it created a lot of sustain, a lot of cycling of really powerful cooldowns, and generally you were just a giant blob of tons of HP, tons of damage, and tons of healing that could just gobble up teams and was really difficult to deal with. But here in Rivals, it's not really used in that way. It's just used to be a very difficult to move source of just raw numbers, raw HP, raw healing, and most importantly, you could stall the cart. And that's exactly what Kiri does. They sit on the cart right out of spawn, and they try to stay there as long as they can. They stay there, they trade damage, they trade heals, and they fight as long as possible. And actually, their Thing player dies right away, but this is okay, because here's the thing. It's not really about trading damage in the tanking role that much. It's mainly about charging defensive ultimates, which we will see in a little bit. But what do you think they do when all of them die right next to spawn? Well, of course, they port back right away. And that's what they do. They port back, they take another close fight, which they actually do win, and they manage to stall this point out quite a while. And you gotta understand, the entire time they're doing this, they're building up ultimates, they're getting more team fights, and most importantly, they're ticking down that clock. And then when they finally die again, they no longer have port from Doctor Strange. They then go mobility heavy characters, including Cap, make it back to point, ult, and get a third contestation with all these powerful ults. Now, on the flip side, when Envy is on defense, they literally do the exact same thing. Yes, it's a different variation with some different tanks, but the core principle is the same. They are playing 3 tanks, 3 supports. They are being glued to the cart, not allowing it to move. Once they lose, they port back, take the high ground, take another refight, and then they try to touch last minute again. They're not successful with that third touch this time, but the thing that they were successful with is buying time, trading ultimates, and this stall objective, or the entire idea of this comp, is to just stall as much as possible, burn as much time as possible, and give you more fights if you possibly can. And this forces teams to actually completely swap around you, as you've seen in both cases. When Envy was on attack and Kiri was on attack, they swapped to very weird and strange compositions in an effort to force the enemy off triple tank, triple support, and then both teams kind of resumed a more orthodox comp once they got past this first objective. And this included stuff like playing a Jeff Storm combo, or playing Punisher, or playing Wolverine, playing characters that could burst through those massive amounts of HP totals, and that's really how they were able to break off these tanks from the cart and move forward. And that's kind of the thing, is that these compositions are indeed counterable, and that's really why we haven't run into like a designated GOATS meta in Rivals, is because you can ban things, and there are tons of characters that can specifically counter it. But the problem here is that the value is already gotten regardless of whether you counter it. If they stall the cart for 2-3 fights and they force you to play really weird characters where you have to swap off them anyways eventually, they got their value, and on Convoy this becomes possible. I think another big thing about this is because the support ults are being generated so quickly, even if your tanks kind of get countered and die right away, you're still going to be able to build up a defensive ult by that second fight. And another aspect of this is that Strange ult can just be used by anyone, so you just always get a refight. And the idea of using Strange ult just to get back for a fight earlier rather than just using it as a last minute touch, and instead just let you hold all the space in the ground and then just try to touch last minute when you finally do have your support ultimates instead in that third touch, makes more sense practically, because it's gonna be hard for you to funnel out of a TP last second anyways when enemies can body block and they really get to control the space that they already hold, and it's just hard for you to push out into them. Now, I will say right away that if you can actually get a team to do this strategy, it's extremely strong, and even stronger in ranked than in pro play, because opponents will legitimately not counter. Like, if enemies swap immediately to try to counter you, it does create some problems, but you get the value anyways when you're on defense just holding cart. But if they go 2, 3, 4 fights without even trying or attempting to swap to counter you, then they could just lose the game right then and there, because they just legitimately don't build up ultimates faster than you, and then you just overcome whatever they eventually swap to with the fact that y'all have 6 ultimates and they have none. Now, the thing about stall is that stall has been always a part of the meta. I think cap stalling has been really powerful in the past, especially in ranked play, but never to this extent, never like this, never so strong that it was legitimately good to play in both ranked and pro play with this level of power. So when your opponents are trying to swap to this, remember to swap quickly to try to counter it with high damage characters and ultimates that can burst through large health totals. And if you can convince players to do this, I think it's actually an extremely powerful and abusable strategy on a lot of these convoy maps. But I honestly kind of would prefer they just nerf it. But that's just my personal opinion. Let me know how you feel about the 4-minute first fight map and the everlasting stall that's being done in pro play. And make sure to smash that subscribe, because I'm going to be breaking down a lot more pro insights that we're learning, because the game is evolving faster than you could ever imagine. But anyways, thank you for coming by. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.